Alright, let's dive right into this explainer. Picture this. You're a manager, and you've just done the impossible. You've finally conquered a massive, agonizing 26-year curse to bring a league title back to your club. The celebrations end, the dust finally settles, and suddenly, everyone is looking at you, expecting you to go out and do it all over again. So how exactly do you improve a team that's already sitting at the absolute pinnacle?
Today we're unpacking exactly how Manchester United answered that incredibly daunting question to secure the 1993/94 Premier League title. We'll explore exactly how they held their nerve in the face of immense, relentless pressure from a heavily funded, incredibly ambitious rival.
Here is how this season unfolds. First, the record-breaking catalyst. Then, steamrolling the division. Third, the Blackburn threat. Fourth, the tipping point. And finally, champions once again.
Okay, let's start with part 1, the record-breaking catalyst.
You see, the fight for this title actually kicked off before a single ball was even kicked. Manchester United had decades of historical prestige, plus the shiny new crown of reigning champions. But Blackburn Rovers? Well, they had something completely different. They had the immense financial backing of their owner, Jack Walker. They had money to burn, and they definitely weren't afraid to use it. In fact, they'd already used this Jack Walker money to beat United to the signing of star striker Alan Shearer just a year earlier. So this wasn't just a rivalry on the pitch, right? It was a full-blown financial arms race.
So how did Sir Alex Ferguson strike back? With a very loud, highly specific number, £3.75 million. That was a British record fee at the time, and United paid it to snatch their absolute #1 summer target, Roy Keane, straight from a relegated Nottingham Forest. Blackburn actually thought they had Keane in the bag, but United swooped in, drawing a firm line in the sand against Blackburn's financial flexing.
And Keane brought a remarkably gritty, ferocious reputation with him to Old Trafford. His character is perfectly captured by this legendary, kind of hilarious anecdote from his former Nottingham Forest manager Brian Clough, who said, "I only ever hit Roy the once. He got up so I couldn't have hit him very hard." I mean, a player who could take a punch from Brian Clough and immediately get back up, that was exactly the kind of pure steel Ferguson wanted to inject into a team tasked with defending a title.
Moving on to part 2, steamrollering the division.
With their midfield completely reinforced by this massive record signing, Manchester United wasted absolutely no time. By week 4, they were already top of the league. And spoiler alert, they wouldn't relinquish that spot for the rest of the campaign. They were pulling off these thrilling, vibrant victories where they were just magnificent to watch. You had Eric Cantona scoring an absolute thunderbolt in a 1-0 win against Arsenal. You had the new man, Roy Keane, proving his immediate worth by capping off a comeback against Manchester City with a late winner in a 3-2 derby thriller. They were scoring, they were fighting, and they were dispatching talented teams like Aston Villa with total ease.
By the beginning of December, that dominance had snowballed into a colossal 14-point gap between them and the rest of the division. They looked totally uncatchable, leaving all their challengers just choking in their wake.
Which brings us to part 3, the Blackburn threat.
And while United were flying high, Kenny Dalglish's Blackburn Rovers had absolutely not given up. United's attack was incredibly potent. They were sourcing goals from everywhere. Eric Cantona was integrating to devastating effect in his first full season, and players like Mark Hughes, Ryan Giggs, Andrei Kanchelskis and Paul Ince were all contributing heavily to the score sheet. But despite this incredible multi-pronged attack, Blackburn's quiet, relentless persistence meant United simply couldn't afford a single slip-up.
And right after Christmas, a dramatic momentum shift happens. United started dropping points, with some really lax 2-2 draws against teams like Swindon and Arsenal. Meanwhile, Blackburn went on an absolute tear. They won 10 of their 12 post-Christmas games. So that seemingly insurmountable 14-point gap, it was suddenly evaporating right before United's eyes.
And that leads us right into part 4, the tipping point.
Just imagine your absolute star player completely imploding just as your fiercest rivals are breathing down your neck. Well, in the spring of 1994, United's talisman, Eric Cantona, was sent off for violent conduct in consecutive damaging draws against Swindon and Arsenal. This earned him a 5-match ban at the absolute most pivotal point in the campaign. It was like suddenly ripping the engine out of United's attack just as the pressure hit a boiling point.
The tension completely peaked in early April. Alan Shearer, the very player Blackburn had bought instead of letting him go to United, inspired Rovers to a vintage 2-0 victory over Manchester United at Ewood Park. Just like that massive 14-point lead was slashed down to just 7 points. United were firmly under the microscope now, and a genuine title run-in was officially on.
Finally, Part 5. Champions once again.
You know, they always say the mark of true champions isn't just about how you start a race, it's about how you respond when your backs are firmly against the wall and the finish line is in sight. When Eric Cantona finally returned from his ban, he immediately scored twice to see off Manchester City in the derby. With their talisman back, United's nerve completely returned. They ruthlessly collected 13 points from a possible 15 in their final run of results. Blackburn, on the other hand, well, their belief entirely failed them. They choked in the final stretch, managing only 5 points from 15 after dropping crucial games to Southampton and Queen's Park Rangers.
Thanks to that absolutely phenomenal closing sprint, United crossed the finish line with 2 games to spare. They finished on an incredible 92 points, a full 8 clear of Blackburn. Over a grueling 42-match season, they lost just 4 times, successfully claiming back-to-back Premier League titles and firmly cementing their era of dominance.
Now, the end-of-season awards tell a pretty interesting story of the campaign too. Alan Shearer rightfully took the Player of the Season accolade for his 31 goals that gave Blackburn a fighting chance, and Newcastle's Andy Cole took Young Player for an astonishing 34-goal return. But crucially, Sir Alex Ferguson took Manager of the Season. He definitively proved he was the master of navigating a title race. He knew exactly when to invest in a player like Roy Keane and exactly how to steady the ship when the storm hit.
So, having seen exactly how they operated in this explainer, how they fended off immense financial pressure from a rival billionaire, how they survived their own mid-season tactical crises and player suspensions, and how they steamrolled a run-in with sheer willpower, you really have to ask yourself a question. Looking back at the decades of success at Old Trafford, is this specific 1993-94 team the absolute crown jewel of Manchester United's modern history? It is a debate that still rages on today. Take away the lessons from this season and decide for yourself.